Hello, folks. Welcome back to World War II TV, and we are continuing our series about Monte Cassino and the wider battles and campaigns. And we talked with Danilo last week about the tourism in the region. We've talked about various aspects of the campaign, but today we are looking at the 80th anniversary commemorations, which are happening right now in the casino area. So my first Monte Cassino guest, who's literally sitting within the shadow of the monastery. So you know him, he's been on the channel before. Edmund O'Sullivan is one half of the O'Sullivan brothers who do that fantastic work chronicling the Irish Brigade, and we're looking today particularly at the role of the London Irish. So I'll bring him in now. Good afternoon in the lovely Italian sun, Eddie. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it looks a bit peculiar, but I'm looking directly, as I showed you, at the Monte Cassino Abbey. It's right in front of me, a mile and a half in front. And for people watching, they'll hear three noises. One will be the croaking of frogs in the Rapido or Gari River down here on the left, about 200 yards away. The other one, occasional barking dogs, mandatory in any good Italian farm. And on the right, a growing group of Polish people who are coming to the pilgrimage, because tomorrow at Monte Cassino is the moment when Poland will commemorate the Polish Corps and people of Poland who served in the Allied cause in obviously from 1941 to 1945.
And that's one of the themes has been the international nature of Monte Cassino. And okay, Normandy is as well, and the 14th Army in Burma is, but there's something about the closeness of the units together in the Cassino campaign. And, you know, they were pretty much fighting shoulder to shoulder, Gurkhas and Poles and Indians and Brits and Americans and Canadians, and that international flavor is so important to bringing people together. We talked with Matthew Parker a couple of days ago about the shared misery. Whether you're a German in the monastery or an Allied soldier attacking the monastery, you're all dealing with the same dust, the same climate, the same why are we here, the forgotten war. So I'm looking forward to talking to you. So we'll bring up your PowerPoint, tell me when to nudge on the slides, and we're looking at what you've been doing these last few days. So over to you, Ed.
Yes, thanks very much. I'm part of a mission that's been organised by my brother Richard O'Sullivan and the London Irish Rifles Association. And our tour is to go to important places in Italy connected with the regiment's service in the Italian campaign from 1943 to 1945. The London Irish Rifles was a formation. They're recruited mainly from men who are of Irish descent or who were born in Ireland, including my dad. And there's a photograph of him. Oh, no, you can't see him. I'll do it later.
Hold it up. You can. There we go.
That's him with his sergeant major after he'd done his 2.5 years in theatre. And I was taken in Austria, so he did the whole Mediterranean, and Algeria, Tunisia, Sicily, the whole of Italy, including the Battle of Monte Cassino and Cassino. So my father was recruited, and he always told me stories, and it is our mission to make sure that story is not forgotten. So by taking a group of people here from 2 battalions of London Irish Rifles, 1st Battalion and 2nd Battalion were here in the Italian campaign. And we're here for the 80th anniversary of the Battle of the Gustav Line. I want to perhaps say that maybe it's time we should be talking in terms not about the Battle of Cassino, but the Battle of the Gustav Line. Yeah. Because the battle that started on the 11th of May extended 25 miles. And that's a map for those people who want to see it. Rome, Naples, and basically in between was the Gustav Line. I should have put it in actually, but go next slide. And that shows the journey that we've done. So we basically started in Minturno. Now, Minturno is not a well-visited place, but it was on the Garigliano line, the Bernhardt line. And it was the last formidable defensive line before the Gustav Line. And this line held up the Allied forces, that's the 5th and 8th armies, mainly the 5th Army, for several months, because they got there in December and they didn't actually break through to the next line until after January. And the Minturno, the Bernhardt line followed basically the line of the river, and the red line from Minturno, Castelforte, and then you can follow that is basically the Gari and the Garigliano that flows down from the mountains into the sea. And that was very difficult to break. So the route we taken, Minturno, Castelforte, then up. We went to San Pietro Infine. I'll talk about that in a minute. Made famous by John Huston.
Yeah.
And then up to Cassino, where we've been for the last 3 days. So next picture.
And we talked, earlier about in this series about the Cassino. Everything in the Cassino campaign is in the shadow of the monastery at Cassino. Literally, and figurative. And I did toy with the idea of calling this series the Gustav Line or Monte Cassino and the Gustav. But the fact is, Monte Cassino is the hook. They are the two words that people take something away from. And even those who are fighting miles away from the actual monastery, it was always looming large in the story. Although it is, as you said there, a battle of rivers and hills.
Yeah, it has got that name, and maybe it was because of the Mashnalani book that was published in 1957, the first major historical account, and it's been repeated. I can see the Matthew Parker who spoke to, I've got his book here, he called it Monte Cassino, but I would argue that it's this period anyway, from the 11th of May to the 18th of May. It's a massive battle. It's the largest battle in the Italian campaign up to this point. At least 500,000 men on the Allied side, and probably the equivalent number on the German side. Two British armies, Allied armies, the 5th and the 8th, the 5th being the American commanded army with the French Expeditionary Corps, and the 8th Army, including British Army formations and the Indian Army, and also under command there was the Polish Corps, the most international campaign of the war. Now, that photograph we got here was taken at 11 o'clock on the 11th of May, 1940. That was not 1944, 2024. And
you're living in the past. You're living 80 years ago this week, Eddie.
Yeah, I know. It's difficult to get confused. The reason why 11 o'clock at night on the 11th of May matters, because that is the very moment when the opening barrage began across the whole front. 1,600 guns from the Tyrrhenian Sea to the Apennines exploded, and it signaled the start of the campaign. Now, Castelforte is not a very well-known town. It overlooks the Gare Ligliano. It's a really picturesque place. It's got magnificent views, and you can see the sea. And Castelforte on the 11th of May was still being held by the Germans. It had been flattened. It was a dead town. It had been attacked for 2 months, bombed for 4 months. And the Gustav Line Association of Castelforte organised a commemoration with speeches and films. And then at 11 o'clock, we had a tremendous firework display. And what was really resonant about it is that as the fireworks went off, you could hear the thunder of the explosions rolling over the hills as if you were listening to the sound of the guns going off. They had reenactors, they had smoke, music, dancing. So it was an amazing evening. And Castelforte is a place worth visiting. There's more about Castelforte in the next slide. So if you go to the next one. Now, that's a photograph taken when there were people of one of 16 museums in Italy that are connected with the Second World War. Not many people know that. And most of them are privately owned, as essentially this is. This is the Gustav Line Museum in Garigliano. It's small. It's open 1 day a week on Saturdays, free to enter. It's entirely run by volunteers, all of them Italians. And one of the things about military museums in Italy, which makes them different from military museums in the United Kingdom, is that military museums in Italy are actually more like archaeology. So everything in that museum has been found on the battlefield. Everything. So they've got German helmets, GI helmets, British helmets, uniforms. They've got cameras. They've got pistols. They've got everything's been fished out of rivers and picked up by their teams. And it's a beautifully arranged place. The dedication of Giuseppe and Paola is absolutely impressive. And I would really recommend anybody who's in the area should pop in there and make sure it's a Saturday and go and see what they've got, and they'll be delighted to see you.
Oh, definitely. And we talked with Danilo last week about, she's not the youngest person doing the battlefield tours, and she worries about where the interest is going to be in 10 and 20 years' time. But these museums and people you're knowing there, are there younger people showing interest and joining in these associations, or is it kind of people our age and...
Well, it does extend across the range, and everybody in Castelforte has got a connection with that moment, because if you're from Castelforte, your town was destroyed. Everybody was a refugee. Everybody was a displaced person for months, and then everybody's life for years afterwards, but was dominated by reconstruction and the economic hardships associated with it. And then, of course, the unexploded ordnance all over the mountains around them continue to be a major issue. And there are places that you still don't want to go because of the amount of ordnance that's there. So it's in their minds all the time. But I think the people who go for it, there's something, I'm not sure what that triggers it. I can't say common factor except for a desire to make sure these events are not forgotten. Anyway, next picture. Now, the next morning, after the magnificent firework display over Castelforte, we went to the Minturno cemetery. There are, I think there are more than 60 Commonwealth cemeteries, war cemeteries in Italy. More than 60. And like you've seen in France, Belgium, they're magnificently maintained. Now, we decided to have a moment there, and in the picture, and we'll come to in the middle, the gentleman with the wreath. His father, Sean Crampton, was in the 1st Battalion of London Irish Rifles. He lost his leg when he stood on a shoe mine in January 1943, leading a patrol. The two people to his left, so if you look at the picture, the two to the right, one taller than him and then his brother, these are James and Dave and Gerard Sweeney. And their father was in the same patrol as Dan Crampton's. So, and they're the ones who got Sean Crampton rather, off the mountain and saved his life. And Sean Crampton, that is Daniel Crampton's father, because when he stood on the shoe mine, he knew what's going to happen. He pushed his foot down firmer to stop it's a double explosion with shoe mines, one detonator and one explosion around West Hyde, to have a very devastating effect, usually killed you. He knew this would happen. He put his foot down, held it and shouted, "Get back." And so when these three people met, the two of the right, the Sweeney brothers, and Daniel Crampton, the one in the middle, they'd never met before. That they met on Saturday for the first ever time. They didn't even know they existed. And one said, Daniel said to James and Gerard, "Your dad saved my life by getting him off the mountain." And James and David and Gerard told Daniel, "Your dad saved our lives by pushing down on the mine." And they'd never met before. 80 years after this event, it's the most extraordinary moment. And that's the kind of thing that can happen when you're doing tours like this. You make family connections and stories that are completely untold. Anyway, next picture. Now, this is the place where Daniel Crampton's father, Sean, lost his right leg. It's Monte Damiano, just overlooking Castelforte. So you can see absolutely beautiful view. You can't see Castelforte, but it's in the gap in the lower down. And the people of Castelforte, about 200 of them came up to join us and be with Daniel to mark the place where his father lost his leg. Now, the connection between Daniel and the museum is continuing because Sean Crampton, the man who lost his leg, lost his right foot, post-war became one of Britain's most famous sculptors. And Daniel, his son, has donated a piece of his father's work to the museum, plus his artwork. And there is now a case in the museum dedicated to his father's memory. So we had, and we can talk about this, we had reenactors from the town. So the controversy of reenactors, are they good or are they bad? We had inevitably the GIs, the Americans and the Germans. And we can talk about that later when I show you a photograph. Move on to the next photograph. Now we have with us two brilliantly handsome, very attractive men representing the London Irish Rifles, both of them top quality bagpipers. And so for those who don't know what an Irish bagpiper looks like, this is it. As you can see, the most notable feature of what they're wearing is that splendid saffron kilt, which is the kilt of the Irish kilt. And then on top of their heads, you can see they wear what's known as baggy cap or a corbine, which is the traditional, it's a characteristically Irish hat. And on top of it, they'll have on the London Irish over their right eye, because, you know, they're a rifle team. You have the badge, the harp of Ireland, and the crown of the United Kingdom, because it's a British Army formation. And then they wear the St. Patrick's green, which rather Irishly is actually blue. St. Patrick's green is a pale blue feather, which is actually worn by officers in Irish battalions. And they went up to the spot where Sean Crampton lost his foot, and they played to the delight of our Italian friends, reenactors and everybody. They played a host of traditional Irish tunes, and they'd never heard anything like it. And look at that spectacular scene. It's like something out of Hollywood. Anyway,
it is beautiful.
Gary Donovan on the left is the pipe major. On the right is Gerard, who is they played together, and they did a huge effect. Next slide. That evening, the mayor, You can spot mayors in Italy because they wear the national flag. I think that's true in France.
Yep.
And in the middle is Giuseppe, who's the director of the museum. And this was a gathering in the square before we processed to the museum to open the extension. So that was on Saturday, 12th of May. Next picture. Now, this is the reenactors. Bit spooky when you're walking through an Italian town and you turn around and you see people like that walking behind it. Very strong commitment to accuracy and dress. But I mean, not sure if I'm like you, and if you share my view, but I'm not that keen on the reenactors. I'm not sure what they do. And there is a troubling undertone if people get dressed up in the uniforms of armies or formations that have committed war crimes. Don't know what you feel.
It's complicated. I mean, I was a living historian reenactor, and I think when it's done well in the right setting, it can be a really good way of getting across aspects of it that books don't and museums do, but it can also be very problematic. And I'm dreading the rival of the reenactors, the crap reenactors into Normandy, which will outnumber the good ones about 10-1, if not 20-1. And so I have mixed feelings about it, and especially when you get the Axis.
The thing that really I think works for Castelforte is because this is a town that actually suffered. It suffered massively. And you can point fingers at who to blame, so it's their decision, isn't it? It's the people of the town who suffered have chosen, the younger generation have chosen to investigate their own history by having reenactors, GIs, people dressed up as GIs, people dressed up as Wehrmacht, and these are Wehrmacht.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the ordinary grunt soldiers, and dressed up as British soldiers with tin hats, and they've actually got some very nice jeeps. So we had the magnificent experience, following the pipers, sitting in the back of a jeep from 1944 as the pipers played the Gary Owen, the regimental march of the London Irish Rifles. It was thrilling. Anyway, next picture. Now this is the next day. So the 13th of May, 2024, and I've already put 1944 again. But this is the moment, roughly, when the Amazon Bridge was completed over the Gari River. This is a very, very important moment for the Royal Engineers. And it's commemorated every year. And this year, at least 500 people from the British Royal Engineers, because the construction of the Amazon Bridge over the Gari was a totemic moment in their history.
Yeah.
83 Royal Engineers killed and wounded putting the bridge over the Gari. It wasn't the first bridge, but it's probably the most important. It was 80 foot long. And so on the morning of daybreak, there was the commemoration roughly around the time when the bridge was completed on the 13th of May. So this is, you got the dates, 11th of May, 12th of May. This is the morning of 13th. So it was just over a day after the bombing started, the campaign started. They managed to complete that bridge. And it was shoved into place by Sherman tanks on the 17th, 21st. And there's a very famous photograph of this bridge being completed. So we went to the very spot. It doesn't look very good. They haven't got a monument there. But we gathered there and we had representatives from the engineers, Major General Dickinson from the Royal Engineer Association, and the usual form. They can see the reef. Next picture.
So before we move on, there are local dignitaries, the mayors and the associations from the region are there, but they're also representatives of the British regiments. Then there's kind of the historian type community like yourself and your brother. But the tone of these is commemorative, rather than sort of are there kind of battle explanations about the battlefields?
Yeah, that goes on. But what's really great about going to an event like this is that you meet people, men and women, and I say, "Oh, my dad was on this day was actually over there," and I point, and they say, "Well, my dad was here," or "My uncle was over there," and that's where he got shot. And from someone who's got a connection like that with a veteran, it's amazing to be with so many people who can actually say, "Well, your dad was here, and my uncle or my dad was here too." And and it's not just the people who are military historians, because a lot of women are there, because it's their dads or granddads, or close personal relationship. And men, these are men who survived, obviously, and came back and could tell the story. So women are very important in telling the story. Often that's forgotten, because they're the curators of the family history.
And as we said with Matthew, we'll move on the slide in a minute, is I said earlier that the shared experience, I think that's what he was saying, was whether you were in an American unit or a British unit, you felt a camaraderie and a kinship with the people in the other units, because the battle had these common denominators of the isolation of it. Everybody had to cross rivers. Everybody was under fire from hills. Everybody had to take hills. Everybody's feeling a bit, lost and forgotten by the public and the attention. So that obviously all these years later, 18 years later, is that shared experience of something, even though they were fighting within different units with slightly different objectives.
Well, Italy is very much an engineer's war. It's probably more of an engineer's war than any other war in history, because more than 1,000 bridges were built. The rivers, the mountains, it's all about, a huge proportion of the progress made by the Allies was due to the work of the engineers. And so everywhere some of the bridges are still there that were built. So it's very important that the engineers are remembered for the contribution they made. They're often forgotten. In other campaigns, they get forgotten. But I think there's no excuse as far as Italy is concerned. Keep going.
We did a show with Julian Whippy a couple of years ago about the campaign into the winter, and one of the engineer units he talked about, I think they built an average of like one Bailey bridge every 16 hours for 6 months or something like that. It was 300 and something where they constructed, sometimes just spanning a 2-foot stream and sometimes across more substantial rivers. And that is a testament to just how busy they were and how many bloody rivers and tributaries there were to go comparatively short distances. But yeah, amazing work. The Royal Engineers don't get enough credit. But we'll move on. Another great photo.
So it's just another one of the monument, Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment. The Beds and Herts were one of the formations. It was the right. Okay. I've had a blade, but they're one of the brigades that crossed the Gari, and the way they got across initially, they had to get over by boats. In fact, the first one over, the British soldier over the Gari in May 1944 swam and got to the other side, and then with a rope, and then fixed up a tow rope so the boats could get across. And once the boats could get across, you couldn't start building the bridge until you controlled both banks. So you had to have infantry on the enemy bank, and inevitably the bank occupied by the Germans was absolutely full of mines. So it was a horrific situation, and you had to really have, I don't know what the mortality rate amongst the first wave, but one of the first wave was, of course, the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment, and this is their monument. And it's something about which that regiment is extremely proud. I mean, the Beds and Herts don't get a lot of shouted about. The Grenadier Guards might. London Irish Rifles gets more than it has, but this is very important. And on the right, we have a bagpiper, Argyll and Sutherland, I think. Anyway, I'm going to get told off now. And a bagpiper who lives in Scotland. I think he was actually born in New Zealand, but that doesn't matter. Scottish. Next. There you are. That's more or less the view I can see here. What a spectacular view. I would argue, Paul, we must have a little competition. What's the most beautiful battlefield in the Second World War?
Oh, I love Malta. When I was there, I thought that was extraordinarily brilliant. And when I was in Bosnia and Herzegovina a couple of years ago, the Neretva Valley there, where there'd been an epic, I think it was the 5th offensive by the partisans there, that was just stunning countryside. But sometimes when I'm on a battlefield, it's hard to switch your brain off from the war to appreciate the beauty. And if you do, it feels like a kind of a contradiction at times. But yeah, there are many battlefiels that are beautiful.
Well, I'm going to nominate Cassino. Monte Cassino is the most beautiful battlefield in the world. Not that I've been to any. 2 nights ago, when I was up at San Pietro Infine, we'll come to that in a second. We drove towards Alta Cruda, says Trevor Sheehan.
Right. What a surprise, eh, Trevor?
Yeah, good for you, Trevor, and God bless Tunisia. I think you've got a point, but Midway Island, yeah, I mean, we all, of course, interested in the military history and what happened to the men who served, but of course, we like to relax, and in my case, this evening, my sponsor has helped me make it a lovely evening. But I'm looking at it now, and last night when I came from San Pietro Infine, I went through the battlefields, and it was all battlefield. And the silhouette, the sun was setting behind Cassino, and it was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. The sky was a pink and rosy orange. And I thought, well, he could beat that. But anyway, let's press on. That's what it looks like now. It really is a lovely spot. Now, we did a bit of bagpiping. The bagpipers are a massive hit here in Italy. I don't think anybody knew what a bagpipe was, and certainly didn't know what an Irish bagpiper was, but they do now. And they have been absolutely, Gary and Gerard, as you can see here, have actually rocking the region. And they just won't let them stop. And this is the front of the casino, Abbey. Now, there it is, Pax, peace. Yeah. And it's a really important message. And that's something that the Abbey really cares about. So we played the pipes there as some of the Royal Engineers were there, actually, past us. Next. Now, this was an extraordinarily moving moment. And there have, over the last 5 days, I have been almost overwhelmed by emotion, because some of the images of things that happen are so powerful. I've been here 6 times, so I'm not new to this place. I'm not a newcomer. But what happened, we got the permission from the Monte Cassino Abbey to come and play at the Polish cemetery, which is behind the cemetery, behind the Abbey. Now, you go there without this, and you can see more than 1,000 graves of men who were killed here in the battles of Cassino and elsewhere. And it is an exceptionally moving place, and it's so important to the people of Poland, and becoming more important. Tomorrow, which is the 18th of May, which is the day, 80 years to the day, that the Abbey was finally captured by the Polish Corps. And so this moment it's in my view, this is the most important expression of the Polish spirit anywhere in the world. And I say to anybody I've met who's Polish or Polish descent, you have to at some point come here. Yeah. You really do. Now, what they're standing by, and this is another interesting part of this story, is they played the lament. It's pipe music is sad music, so appropriate. It was very dignified. And they are standing by the grave of General Vladislav Anders, commander of the Second Corps, who's died in England, but he's buried there with his wife. And tomorrow, his daughter, Anna Maria Anders, is going to be there at the ceremony for the Poles. And one of the things that's really striking, when I looked at his grave, I realized that he had died on the 12th of May, 1970. That he had died on the 12th of May. And anybody who knows the Polish Corps and Cassino will know that the Polish Corps' first attack to try and take the Abbey in the area took place on the 12th of May, 1944. And I feel, the light is getting a bit funny, the sun is coming down. I feel that maybe, 12th of May was a moment of great soul searching for General Anders, because he led his men out of Soviet Union, out of the gulags, into Iran, then into Syria, then they got them then into Palestine, and told them we're going to fight for the freedom of Poland. And of course, at the end of the war, the majority of the Second Corps soldiers, the majority of them didn't go back to Poland.
Yeah.
There may be as many as 1 million people living in the United Kingdom who are descended from Polish Corps soldiers. 1 million. Think about that.
And it's crazy. And then there's the whole story Danilo said of gulags and problems post-war and the Cold War. And I was just searching on Amazon today for books about Monte Cassino, because I was rearranging my bookshelves, and there are huge numbers of books in Polish about the Polish battle in Monte Cassino. It is as well debated by the Poles 80 years on as Gallipoli is by the Australians, or the Somme is by the Brits. It is, or the Gettysburg by Americans. It is, for them, probably not only their most important and significant and costly battle in World War II, although, of course, there's the Warsaw Uprising and the Holocaust as well. But it's the one they still haven't quite got their heads around in terms of debating it. There's controversies. And
I think I would say, Paul, that Monte Cassino is one of the moments in the Second World War which is unambiguously positive for the Poles. So even though they paid a price, they won. They were on the good guy side.
Yeah, good point.
And the beautiful words that engraved, and I'm going to misquote them now, that I gave my body to Italy, my soul to God, but my heart to Poland. You can't read that on the obelisk on 593. We wanted to cry. It's some of the most beautiful words ever written. And what is interesting about the Polish visitors, there's a group here, and they're sitting here very happily. They're from Warsaw. They've never been here before. And they just walked up, they looked, and they spotted it and said, "Oh, look, it's Monte Cassino." They've read about it. And one of the things that happened, obviously under the communist system, but not just that, the story of the Polish Corps in Italy and Monte Cassino was not told, because the majority of people who served in it didn't go back to Poland. There wasn't, and even if they did, their story was suppressed. So it's becoming very important. I mean, obviously, there's downsides to any too close association between any individual battle and a national identity.
Mm.
You know, it's like, you know, the British say, you know, 2 World Wars, 1 World Cup, or, you know, things like that.
Yep.
England, Germany games, ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there is a danger in it. And nevertheless, it is inspiring. And I think it will inspire many of the people who are going to be here tomorrow. And there's going to be at least 10,000. I suspect it will be more. Keep going.
Yeah, and I love the fact that these, you know, there's this Irish recognition at a Polish cemetery and Poles going to the, you know, the British. It's, again, we're echoing this idea of you don't just go there to honor your own regiment, your own nation, you honor the shared experience. And I think that sometimes doesn't always happen in Normandy. People go to their own national areas and don't always spread out enough. And I think, yeah, Monte Cassino seems to have a particularly strong bond and an acceptance of this, again, this shared experience. But back to you. Amazing photos and amazing commentary.
This is iconic spot, possibly the most iconic spot apart from the cemetery, which is the .593 in Snake's Head Bridge.
Yeah.
And the Poles, in their first attack, I mean, hundreds were killed by machine gun fire. It's absolutely appalling. And this monument is placed, and you can now drive there from the cemetery. And it's got the most spectacular views over Cassino. I mean, it's just beautiful just to go there for a visit. And you read the words, and it's got the names of those who died, and it's really powerful. Next. Now, I mean, you have to laugh. But this is Carol from Warsaw. I've never met him before. And we were sitting by the brewery, and we'll come to that in a minute, that has been built by the Monte Cassino Abbey underneath Snake's Head Bridge. And then this gentleman showed up, and he was wearing a British Army uniform. I'm not sure what he was wearing at the time. And we went up to him and said, "Hello, are you?" And he said, "Carol, this is Charles. And where are you from?" "Warsaw." "So have you ever..." He's done a bit of travel, but his English was reasonable, but he's not, you know, he lives in Warsaw. So I said, "Oh, we're from the Irish Brigade." And he said, "1 minute." He went into his rucksack. And you love this, I don't know if you do. And he changed his epaulets. You see the epaulets? So he's got the
sliders. Yeah.
He's got the 78th Division Black Battle Axe. He's got the shamrock of the Irish Brigade, and he's got the red triangle of the 6th Inniskillings. And then he went to his bag again, fished out a completely accurate Royal 6 skins Inniskillings Corbin, and then, to our amazement, attached the completely accurate Inniskillings badge, which is the castle, and then on top he had the grey hackle. And I mean, there's different, you know, people are reenactors, but you've got to forgive anybody, because there could be no more appropriate place to wear that outfit than there. Because that's where the skins were, literally.
Yeah.
Skins were literally 600 yards away from them. And one of the wonderful things about it on our mission is Mr. Robin Wilson, whose father was in the 6 skins in Cassino in April and May 1944. So I mean, it is, sometimes you do wonder where you are, but you've got to say, God bless Carol. And look at that, what commitment and dedication. He's got to be the only person on the planet who's got the full outfit like that. And,
certainly from Warsaw, yeah. And I mean, I used to do my living history days. It was quite, when you were doing North Africa, Western Desert, or Italy, and you could change allegiance pretty quickly. You'd have a bag full of different epaulets, and then Grenadier Guards in the morning, you know, change it. Yeah, just a quick shifty of
God bless Carol if he's watching. And he said, "So thank you so much for honouring the Irish Brigade and the skins." So it's so wonderful, really. It was touching. There's someone. He's actually. He does look good. He's actually. I mean, he almost looks like he was one of the officers. They all had little moustaches at that point.
Yeah.
The officers. Next. And I can't... I mean, this is extraordinary, really. At Albanata Farm, or close to it, which was one of the bloodiest parts of the Monte Cassino battlefield, approval has been given to construct a brewery. And this is it, Birrificio Monte Cassino, and they make beer there. It's called Monte Cassino beer. And in fact, the photograph we showed, I was sitting, it was hot, you know, we needed something we need to hydrate. So we had a couple of Monte Cassinos, and that's where it is. And actually, I mean, it's a brilliant idea. I have to say it's a brilliant idea. I don't know how on earth. It's owned by the Abbey. So the building is owned by the abbot. The brewery, actually, you can see inside, it's got the whole kit. So, and we were there, and it's a lovely spot. I've got to say, hardly anybody there. We were sitting there. You could see Snake's Head Ridge, beautiful countryside. The weather was perfect. Nobody was there apart from us and the Six Skins guy and his mates. And we had a couple of Monte Cassinos. I mean, I'd recommend it. That's another competition maybe you should have, Paul. Best places, best battlefields to have a drink at.
Oh yeah, well, there's no place that isn't suitable to have a drink. But that, we've got friends coming over later, and I bought a bottle of wine in the hypermarket a couple of days ago, and it with like these I don't know, like pewter kind of plates on the red wine bottle, and one was of the Mulberry Harbour, and one was of a German gun battery, like Long Sir Mayor. So I bought, it's got D on it, and but I'm thinking, part of me is thinking, well, that's really cool, and part of me is thinking, well, that's a bit weird, though, isn't it? Putting a German bunker and a gun battery on a bottle of wine, but that's the complicated issue with regards remembrance. You know, at what point is it okay to hoist the beer in commemoration?
Well, this is Monte Cassino. It's an abbey, so it's like Benedictine. You know,
they've got track record. Monasteries and beer has got a long millennia of history. Yeah,
you know, it's less offensive in that sense than it might otherwise have been. And I recommend people go there and get yourself a couple of bottles of Monte Cassino and toast the Polish Corps or the Irish Brigade.
Yeah, if you're having it to toast the fallen, is it really having a beer? I mean, that's the excuse, isn't it? You know, I'm just toasting the fallen, my dear. You know, it's your seventh toast in half an hour. But
Paul, you are obviously more experienced on that front. Move on to the next one. Now, this was another lovely moment. We applied a long time ago through our friend Michele Dellanano, and we said, we've got pipers, we're doing commemoration. Is it possible? Is it possible to allow the pipers to play inside the Abbey? And Michele worked very hard on our behalf, and we got the official approval from the Abbot. And this is the spectacular view from the Abbey over the Leary Valley. And the pipers played the combination and laments. It was completely dignified, and it was a showstopper. Pilgrims were there, and they from all over the world, Poles, Americans. American lady, she was so moved that she gave me the holy water that she had just got from them. And it was lovely. And that's a brilliant view. That's another place. I mean, it's all that's keep going.
Beautiful photo.
And this is our pipers. So on the left, Jared, on the right, Gary. And in the middle, he's I didn't get his name, but he came out. He's obviously checking we weren't, misbehaving. And he was very pleased. And he's from the Abbey. He's a priest. Next. Now, this is not a very good shot, but this is the crypt in Monte Cassino, and it was originally built in 600. So the structure is originally 1,500 years old, and you can't see it very well, but we actually got the pipers down there, and they played, and it was incredibly moving. Abide with me on the pipes in this crypt. And the resonance was magnificent. I mean, the sound went on for 5 seconds sometimes, but this was one of the best places in the world I've ever heard bagpipes. And when the reverberation faded away, we were just stunned by the majesty of the place, the quality of the playing, and just the extraordinary impact that the sound had. And that was lovely. Next. Right. Now, we've had a lot of really amazing moments. And I think out of this visit, this is probably the most important and one that mattered most to me. And I hope you'll indulge me and allow me just to chat for a couple of minutes, the context, because this is a really powerful story. My dad, that's Ted O'Sullivan, and Eddie Mayo, that's the guy there on the right. They were both conscripted into the London Irish Rifles on the same day in October 1939. Eddie Mayo on the right with the moustache and the corbine and the hackle. He was born in Dagenham, East Ender. And he was one of 14, the youngest of 14 children. He was working in the Ford factory in Dagenham, and he joined. My dad was working actually in Jeeves and Hawks as a salesman in the West End. So they're all lumped in together. Neither would have been in the army. Now, Eddie Mayo, my dad was 5'4" and 8 stone. Eddie Mayo was well over 6 foot and a real athlete and a magnificent specimen. And he was the star recruit, enlisted man of 1939. So in 1942, when he went out to Tunisia in the Irish Brigade, London Irish Rifles, part of the Irish Brigade, and he distinguished himself. He got the military medal. He was wounded twice. And I don't want to bore people, but on the night of the 15th of May, 1944, the London Irish Rifles was brought up to lead the attack through the Gustav Line on the 16th of May. So they arrived right on the front line. And in fact, the hotel we're staying at, and it's a remarkable moment, is more or less on the spot where the London Irish were entrenched on the night of the 15th. You can actually stand on it. My father, who was colour sergeant, was responsible for supplying food and other material to the men. And normally, when a battle was about to take place, and they knew they were going into action the next day, they knew. The London Irish Rifles, in parallel with the Second Lancashire Fusiliers, are going to attack the German strong points 1,000 miles away. It's like the Somme, frankly. It's just the same. And my dad knew that, Eddie Mayo knew that he was going to lead his boys in. He was a section leader, and he knew that he'd done it about a dozen times. So I guess he knew that the odds were getting kind of increasingly worse as time went on. So my father, who was his best mate, instead of going back to the depot to prepare to bring the food up that next evening when the attack was complete, spent the whole night in the trench in the place where we were. And my father often spoke about, and it was a moment for men to talk about everything, their hopes, their fears, and what they're going to do in the future. And that was a very telling moment. My dad went back at dawn, and then at 9 o'clock, the artillery barrage came in, and Eddie Mayo, he took over command of the platoon because the platoon commander was actually Nicholas Mosley, son of Oswald Mosley, who just got out of prison. Nicholas Mosley was the platoon commander who was serving out breakfast at about 7 o'clock, spooning out in mess tins in the trenches to the lads, give him a bit of rum as well. And he got hit in the wrist with shrapnel. He was told he had to go to. So they said, right, Sergeant May, you're going to have to be the platoon commander. So there he was. So at 9 o'clock, barrage started. The whole front, it was one of the heaviest barrages of the Italian campaign, and just ripped everything up in 1,000 yards away. And when the guns stopped after 20 minutes, it was a crawling barrage. And apparently the London Irish Rifles commander saw nothing happen. And Eddie Mayo stood up and he said, 8 platoon follow me. And right across the front, 500 men from the London Irish Rifles rose from their trenches with their bayonets and advanced towards the Inferno before them. The tanks came behind him. Now, Eddie Mayo got to his position, dug his own foxhole, told his boys to dig in. There's going to be a counterattack, went to his foxhole, and then he was killed by a Nebelwerfer. It was a very hard moment for my dad. Now, that was 80 years ago yesterday at 12 noon. Now, the man with the back to us, and we're looking in full frontal, that is Eddie Mayo's grandson, Alan Mayo. And he had made a promise that he was going to honor his grandfather's memory and be there. And he's this year, after he's managed to get there, first time, and he's standing in front of his grave. You can see the grave, you see the harp.
Yeah.
Eddie Mayo. So Eddie Mayo, that guy on the right who died, left 2 children. And Alan is the son of Eddie Mayo's only son. So he came back and did this. Now, what was really incredible at this moment, and there were so many extraordinary moments. Now, you're not a West Ham fan, are you?
No, sir. Ipswich.
Well, I can tell you there are at least 2. There are 3 West Ham fans in that picture.
Okay.
Gary on the right, the Piper, is a West Ham fan from Dagenham. Eddie Mayo was an West Ham fan, and so was Eddie Mayo's son, and Alan Mayo is a West Ham fan. And after we did this, Gary O'Donovan had never done this ever before. Gary O'Connor, never done it before. He turned behind Eddie Mayo's grave and played, guess what?
Would it be I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles, Ed?
I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles.
Which now we've alienated half the audience who have no idea.
No,
look it up, folks.
I'm a Spurs fan. Look, come off it.
Yeah.
I love I'm a Forever Blowing Bubbles because
it's one of the classic football.
I think it's an infantryman's song because I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles, pretty bubbles in the air. They fly so high, it even touched the sky. And then, like my dreams, it's a story of heartbreak. They fade and dry. Fortune's always hiding, though I look everywhere. But I'm forever blowing bubbles in the air. It's the story of hope over experience, over everything. And I mean, I was
welling up now. Thank you for that.
Because
I'm losing it. Thank you.
Because I believe, actually, I'm forever blowing bubbles should actually be the national anthem. I can't think of anything more appropriate for the British people.
It's less.
We're forever blowing bubbles and dreaming.
Yeah. Let's start a petition. Let's do that. Let's start that. But you've moved me, and you're moving the viewers with the story there. But I'm also going to talk about. I want to bring in how more wonderful it can be visiting battlefields with other people. I know it's not, people don't have the opportunities to travel, but if you do get a chance to travel, and you do so with other people, because the experience multiplies. Especially in this situation, we've got people with a different aspect, a different personal connection, and the stories just combine somehow and make the experience so much better for everybody. And
well, the thing is, what do we emphasize in what we do and everything we do? We emphasize the family connection.
Yeah,
the children, the grandchildren, the mothers, the daughters. Not just the blokes who want to look at battlefields. And actually, in many respects, the battlefield's a bit boring, dare I say, unless you've got a family connection. If you say that's where my dad was, like we sat on the 15th of May. And no, I sat at the very spot that we had 80 years ago previously, at that very place. My dad and Eddie May had their last conversation together. And if there's a mission that I've got, and I've often struggled with it, why was my father the way he was after the war? He was trouble, obviously, by experience, not least because he was a survivor and others didn't survive, including his best mate. And I think in the end, if there is a mission that I have acquired in this process, is to tell the story so it's not forgotten.
No, and you're doing a sterling job, Eddie, and Richard as well, because you're right. Battlefields, without the personal story, it's just 2nd Battalion kicked off at 1000 hours, 3rd Battalion kicked off at 10:15 hours. They moved under a creeping barrage. The unit of grenadiers ahead of them was doing this, and this battery fired off this number of shells, and it's data. That's data, isn't it? But without,
of course, it's boring, really. And let's be. I mean, I can read it. I mean, I've written it, but it's not. If you're trying to preserve the memory, let's keep talking about. Now, another amazing part of the story, at the same place at the same time, when we were there, we could see an elderly group. I mean, when I say elderly, older than me, right? One, obviously, quite a lot older, and another person. It turned out that this is Richard, my brother. He's the other half of this brilliant project. He's the main inspiration, in fact. Turned out I was watching at them, and I went up to them because they were looking at us with the pipes. Who wouldn't notice? And they came up to me and said, "What are you here for?" And I said, "We're, join us. We're doing a commemoration." And they said, "Right, we're here because over there is the grave of my dad and my sister's dad. They were there. They come from Canada. To do it. And he was in the Fusiliers." And I said, "Well, when we were born, guess where they were born? Dagenham. Guess what team they supported? West Ham. They joined us and we sang it together." I mean, if there isn't a better moment in my life, tell me what there is, because that was just magic.
It's some of us, it's difficult to express our feelings sometimes. I'm better at it because I do this, but through song with strangers, you can express what you feel and what you're experiencing much better by just doing that sometimes than the trite interviewer question when they come out. So how are you feeling? I hate it when interviewers come, someone's just won an Olympic gold or something, and how are you feeling now? They're so, I know we want to know the answer, but these moments of expressing things through song or togetherness or just shared silence.
Yeah, well, the interesting, they came from Vancouver. They came from Canada, Ontario. I mean, what an incredible coincidence. And they said, "That's where my dad's buried. 14th of May, Fusilier, just over the bridge." And I said, "That's where my dad was, and that's where his dad was buried."
Wow.
There's an immediate connection forever.
Yeah.
Right, keep going.
Yeah, wonderful stuff.
Well, this is Eddie Mayo the next day, and that's the closer up. That's Eddie, and that's his grave. That's the photograph of Eddie Mayo, It's a very, very, very. I mean, it's not for me to say, but we were all moved, and if we were all moved, then Alan certainly was very moved, because he was fulfilling an obligation, and he lived his life in the shadow, believe it or not, of the events that took place 80 years ago. Affected his dad, affected his family, and it gets. We're affected by it. I mean, my dad's a work veteran. I can still hear his voice. So he was affected by it. So many people were. So next, anyway, God bless you, Alan. I hope you're watching. Now, here we go. This is another amazing moment. So there we were with our bagpipers, and I contacted the German embassy, and I said, you're having your ceremony in the German War Cemetery on the 15th of May. And he said, you are. And I said, well, we'd like to come, but we've got a couple of bagpipers. Would you like them to play? And I don't sure if they even know what they are, but they said, oh, Irish bagpipers, sounds a bit neutral. Yes, you can. Now, this is the shot. It's a magnificent location. Behind them is Monte Castellone. You can't see it, but it's really with a wonderful view. I think it may well be the largest German war cemetery in Italy. And have you been to German war cemeteries? Have you been to them, Paul?
Yeah.
They're pretty grim places. They're pretty grim. They don't look, they're very heavily visited. And often there's multiple names on for obvious reasons. I mean, for obvious reasons. So this year, I believe this is the largest ever commemoration of a German cemetery in Italy, ever. And so we had a huge turnout. We had a large number of German representing the German parachutes team. So they're wearing their red hats. And then we had people, every embassy was representing the British, the American, the New Zealand. And we had a wonderful session now. Our pipers were there looking magnificent. So I said to the ambassador of Germany, I said, would you like the pipers to play when we're having refreshments afterwards? Behind there is a refreshment tent, a glass of wine and that. And he said, yes. And I said, well, okay, well, we'll play something for you, sir, that I think you will like, but wait until we get there. And so the pipers have been preparing this, and they got there, and everyone's gathered around and going to play, and they played Ode to Joy. Now, I don't know if you know this, Paul, and I think perhaps I maybe learned this for the first time. There's almost no song or tune that moves every German regardless. Ode to Joy, final movement of Beethoven's Ninth, written by a German, a celebration of human brotherhood and friendship and peace. They love it. And it is a magnificent piece of music.
It is.
And to have our bagpipers play, and I'm not sure how often that's been done. I went to the ambassador and I said, have you ever heard Beethoven's Ninth play the bagpipes? He said, no, it's very nice. And what a wonderful moment. That was great. It was a great privilege to be there. I want to thank the German War Graves Commission for having the imagination, letting, London Irish Rifles to come. And it was a commemoration by Italians and Germans, and of course everybody was there, but it was the Irish pipers who made a really big mark. Next.
Well, it's the uniting aspect of it. It's bringing people together. That's the world should be bringing people together, not driving wedges between them. And yes, wars divide us temporarily and cause terrible, terrible tragedies and terrible loss, but we should always be trying to unite. That's Woody's message of the day.
Good for you. And that is just a photograph, the entrance to the German, and we had the pipers were standing there as everyone went past. They were listening to Beautiful Men. Everyone loved it. It was, I recommend if there's something about this. The Ireland was neutral in the Second World War, so you know what I mean. There isn't sort of next. Now on the 15th of May in the evening, I was at last minute called up to go to San Pietro Infine. San Pietro Infine was a town which was on the Bernard Line, and it was attacked by the Americans mainly in January 1944, completely destroyed. And John Huston, heard of him, filmmaker, made what is, I believe, the only live action documentary film made in the Second World War. He went there, he was a film director, and he made a film about the destruction of San Pietro Infine. So you can look at it and give anybody want to, you can go to it. Now, what happened? The town was so completely wrecked, it was abandoned. And this is called the San Pietro Infine Ghost Town. So it's just like that. And the new town's been built up. Now, if there's a place where I do actually think is one of the best places to have a drink over a Second World War battlefield, it's at the bed and breakfast in San Pietro Infine, where I was there with the National Army Museum delegation just by chance. And we were sat there admiring this brilliant view, because I'll show you in the next slide why. Now, here we are. We've got Gary and Gerald. But behind them, that big hump in the distance is Monte Cassino. unbelievable mountain, unbelievably difficult battle. And of course, the London Irish were there. And then to the right of the picture, that hump is Monte Lunga, which is, I think, Audie Murphy was there. And it's got that hump to the right, the lower one, to the when you look at the picture on the right, that was the first occasion where Italian soldiers fought on the Allied side in the Second World War. And it's very important for Italy because they said, no, we got out of the war, we changed sides, and now we're fighting for the Allies. And that's where many Italians will say the modern Italian army was born there. But that whole area, everything you see in the background was a battlefield. All of it. Mignano Gap, everything. And we were there, and the lads, it got so intense that I was obliged to do an Irish jig, if you can imagine it.
Not without nightmares, but I'll try. Yeah, no, it's
yeah, I know it gives me nightmares, but it was so.
But just, I mean, I know we've seen lots of photos during this series, but those hills they're not little bumps, are they? I mean, I know I'm being trite now, but no wonder that campaign was so costly. You can't bypass them. It's the whole Highway 6 thing, the hills there, the Gustav Line.
It's pretty tough climbing them in lovely spring weather with backpack and hydration and working. You imagine doing that in January, end of January, with temperatures at the top below freezing, snow, rained every day, and being shot, tread on minefields. It really nightmarish situation for them. Next.
Yeah, and this is the last one. Yeah.
Right, now this is another really moving movement, and it comes back to the Eddie Mayo story. The London Irish Rifles reached one of the places they reached on the 16th of May. That's yesterday, literally yesterday, 16th of May, 1944. So 80 years ago, yesterday. So we were there yesterday to go to this place. It's the houses. It's called Hamlet Synagogue, and there are a couple of buildings on the left of that picture, which are the buildings that were there in 1944. And so the London Irish Rifles commemorated the Pay the Pipes, and it was an opportunity for Alan Mayer to come. He's in the distance. And because just over to the right of that picture, roughly about 100 yards or so, is where his grandfather actually was killed. And the lovely thing about it is that the village is called Synagoga, but the family who lived there are called Synagoga. It's Mr. and Mrs. Synagoga, Franco and Clara Synagoga. And they have for many years been offered us tremendous hospitality when we go there. And we wreck their place and destroy their homes, His father was Franco's father was a bit of a boy at the time this happened, but he's always been very friendly and very generous, and it's a wonderful place for us to. I mean, it's sad for goodness' sake, but and so in the picture there with the cool bean is Tony Robinson from the London Irish Rifles Association. He was the lead, so that was an appropriate way of getting. And of course, Anne had the chance to meet the synagogue, shake hands, and introduce himself, and I'm sure he'll be coming back. And so will we. Anyway, that's it, Paul.
It's amazing stuff.
Well, just to say one other thing. What did I do today? Oh, I went to Rome. Yeah, I saw a new film.
Oh, just a little casual trip to Rome.
Yeah, it's €9 by train to Rome from here. So what a bargain. And then tomorrow is the Polish commemoration. Then on Saturday, here at Monte Cassino, is the British Commonwealth. So that is commemoration for the Brits, the Canadians, the New Zealanders, the Indians, and everybody that were. It's the British Commonwealth commemoration. That's going to be another big event here. Anyway, that's it, Paul. Thank you very much.
Just a quick. Can you just, for those who are unaware, just the 2-minute summary of the London Irish Rifles, how their casino campaign came to an end. I mean, I know that there's lots more fighting ahead. They've got to fight them up Italy, but what was the pivotal moment that brought it to?
Well, the story is they said, bury your dead, pack up your troubles, off we go to the next battle, and the next battle was north of Rome, and then they went to Egypt, and then they finished up on the Gothic line, and they fought there. And they finished up in Austria, and they crossed the border, I think, about the 9th of May, 1945, into the Third Reich, which is now Austria.
Yeah.
And went immediately from being in a war zone to one of the most peaceful parts of Europe. Southern Austria was largely unaffected by the war. And a lovely time there, lots of beer, and great opportunity. But London Irish Rifles had a tremendous battle honours. Both of the battalions were in Italy, and they have really tremendous battle honours. The number of battles they're involved is just mind-boggling. It's about 35. And the regiment no longer exists. It's now been absorbed essentially into the Irish Guards. However, the story continues, doesn't it, Paul? Just because the regiment doesn't exist doesn't mean you stop telling the story.
Well, absolutely, and my great uncle, our shared connection is that my great uncle was Royal Ulster Rifles, but he became an officer in the London Irish Territorials after the war, so retired a major. So he wore his GS cap pulled down one way and his carbine pulled down the other way. So he did both in the course of his career.
Yeah, one of the nice things about doing the work with Alamein and my father is that these were people who never rose beyond the rank of sergeant major. It's the ordinary blokes' war, and they weren't professional soldiers, conscripted. They learned to be brilliant soldiers. And at the end of the war, they went home, packed it all away, got their old jobs back, and got on with life.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, and I'm glad you're there and Richard is there to do this work, because unfortunately there are brigades, regiments that don't have an ambassador, a historian, someone. There are plenty who do, but there are plenty who don't. And it's sometimes I'll be looking up a division, an entire American division. There's not a single book on the division because they've just fallen through the cracks. Or the same would apply to some of the British units. There just hasn't been that person or organization.
I agree. You don't have to be an ex-soldier. I'm not. You don't have to be an historian. I'm not. You don't have to have any of that. You just have to have the passion that I have, because this is my family.
Yeah.
One bomb, one bullet 80 years ago, I wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
So can I just see if this works? I want to see the sun's gone down, and I wonder if you can see it appropriately on the night of the last day of the Operation Diadem, and whether you can see Cassino. Let's see. Can we see it? Can we see it? There you go.
Yeah, there we are.
So God bless you, everyone. God bless Cassino.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Eddie, I'm going to let you get back to the vino and the fantastic Italian food. It's been fantastic for you to take your time out to tell us about it, because it's the fact these things were happening to you today and yesterday just makes it so personal. We've all enjoyed hearing from you, and have a great continuation. Thank you again from all of us for the work you're doing, bringing people together, bringing communities together, and telling these stories. You're a legend in your own lifetime, sir. So thank you very much.
Can I say to you, and I mean this, mate, from my heart, you've done more than any individual I know to make sure the memory is not lost. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep up your good work. And thank you for allowing me to tell this story in the way I have.
Well, thank you. We'll have a big hug some point. We'll meet up in the pub in London and have another hug. Yeah, brilliant. Well, folks, that's it. What a amazing show. I'll see you all again tomorrow. This is Paul Woodhouse. On Monday. Paul Woodhouse from World War II TV. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cheers, everybody. Bye.
Bye.